that would bring some sort of benefit for the Trump administration in what's going on right now?
First, Nima, I'm going to put on my historian's hat here for a moment. This is not a new phenomenon. In fact, one could make a very good case, as indeed some historians have, especially historians who aren't caught in the war and are looking at the facts such as they are. You could make a case, a very good case, for the United States having provoked Japan into World War II. And the way we did that was precisely the way Donald Trump right now, not precisely, but the broad sweep of the policies that Besant, for example, is advocating were really the start of Japan's problems and very productive in many respects of the war that would follow, the attack on Pearl Harbor and so forth. Not for a moment do I mean the tactical things that happened, but I mean the decision by Japan to go to war with the United States of America when many of its wisest, both military and political figures knew it was a tremendous gamble. And as Yamamoto said, he was pretty sure that Japan would lose. Even with that, they went to war. And they went to war because we had made their economic situation untenable. They simply could not survive with the embargoes that we had placed on them. And whether we knew that or not is a great question of history. Whether we realized we were pushing Japan inevitably into conflict is a question. I'm not sure you can answer it with any firmness, but that's what we're talking about here. But it's working both ways, and I think it is working more dramatically in favor of the Iranians rather than the empire. And what I mean by that is their impact on our ability to sustain this conflict from an economic point of view is far greater than our ability to influence Iran, especially with Russia and China behind it, so that it gives up the fight, so to speak, because of economic reasons. So that's where we are right now. No chance still for the United States to prevail over Iran. And if we continue to try the kinds of things we're doing, we may provoke Iran into a truly draconian attempt, which would probably be successful, at least in part, to disturb majorly the global economy. First, perhaps the regional economy, which they've done a very good job of already, but then majorly the global economy, which wouldn't be a big leap to go from what they've done that has impacted the global economy, but so far is more or less survivable, but is increasingly growing otherwise, to make it unsurvivable, or at least unsurvivable for a goodly portion of the world, both economically and even in terms of sustaining life. When you look at the global south and other people who don't have things to eat, won't have things to eat in draconian fashion if Iran does what it's going to do. And then you look at the new developments, the new regional and also what I would call, in some respects, international developments. You have China and you have Russia, and you have them in a different posture with regard to Southwest Asia, a completely different posture that is now productive of Air Force exercises, for example, between China and Egypt, and amongst other members of the Southwest Asia region as they want to come in, including Iran. So we have now China and certainly Russia, but a little bit less ostentatious with Russia because it's tied down in Ukraine, of course. But you have China now doing things that aren't in China's playbook. And they're doing them not so much because the strategy develops on a daily basis, it does, but they're doing them because the empire is compelling them to do them. And so you now have China in a far more forward-leaning way doing things that sort of say, we guarantee, Washington, that you're not going to defeat this country.
Yeah. Here is, Larry, what was reported on Bloomberg. As you see here, in this picture, it says that the United States has only 41 days of crude oil supply left, the lowest since 1970s.
Yeah,
And
72, I think. Lowest
Yeah.
since 72, if I remember.
this is this is the way that the Strait of Hormuz has influenced the
Well,
oil reserve.
it's not just the Strait of Hormuz. Give the Houthis some credit. It's also the Red Sea.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's going to play larger and larger as long as. And have you heard the latest? We have so lost control of the Bab el-Mandeb and that area in general that the Somali pirates are back out again, operating again. We had, the Combined Joint Task Force, the U.S. Joint Task Force, and the Combined Task Force, which included the Chinese even. We scared the Somali pirates, deterred them, put them back on land, doing whatever they had to do to make a living. Now they're back out again at sea, and they're stopping ships again because it's melee in the Bab el-Mandeb. There's no one there providing security like they were before. And I'm not sure you're going to get those people to come out of Djibouti and elsewhere, Chinese, the French, and others, and put a naval force down there to deal with the Somali pirates as long as the Houthis are doing what they're doing. So we've got a twin problem, if you will, in that area.
Just hours ago, we've learned that another oil tanker was targeted in the northern part of the Red Sea, near the coast of Yanbu.
Yeah.
And this is the port of Saudi Arabia. And they're basically controlling everything, the Houthis. They're controlling everything in the Bab el-Mandeb.
Yeah, if we think the port of Eilat in Israel was pretty much dead before this, it's got a stake in its heart right now. I mean, and that port was a very important port for Israel. Not as essential as, say, Haifa, but it was a booming port. It was a port that had a lot of business going through it. And there are also a lot of IDF well, there are two, I think, Air Force and one ground force military installations north of Eilat, which are now having trouble because Eilat is closed. You can't get a ship in there.
Today, we've learned that Asim Munir, the Pakistani Asim Munir, went to Iran to talk with the Iranian officials, with the head of Iranian parliament, basically sending the message, delivering the message of the United States to Iran. And they said the preconditions are the same. And they have to, the preconditions, as you remember, it was mentioned in the latest statement of the National Security Council of Iran, Supreme National Security Council.
Right.
It mentions all the fronts from Yemen to Iraq, then going to Lebanon and to Palestine.
Yep.
And these are the preconditions. And do you think that Donald Trump, beside putting pressure, economic pressure on Iran, he's still thinking of getting back to the war after midterm elections?
Answering a question about the future and Donald Trump's decision making is an impossible thing to do. I mean, you can speculate, but this man is all over the map on a daily basis, hell, on an hourly basis. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth. You never know essentially what many of his disciples, especially Besant and Hegseth, are going to say. And you never know how that's going to impact whatever is happening. In Hegseth's case, it's impacting majorly the armed forces right now. You have a lot of men and women in the armed forces who are asking themselves fundamental questions right now. Would I obey what I consider to be an immoral order, for example, or an unethical order, or an order that I don't agree with, like, for example, drop some bombs on those civilians over there, or do this or do that? You have mutinous conditions developing in the armed forces that Hegseth is doing, and Trump too are doing. You notice all the exultations and the remarks he makes whenever he's around military or when he's addressing the military. Greatest military on the face of the earth, blah, 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 blah. Well, Hegseth's got problems in the ranks right now. lots of problems in the ranks. It's not just the Christian nationalism. It's not just things like Lincoln and not getting proper food and water and such, not getting proper rest time. It's the whole business of Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth being commander-in-chief and his disciple in charge of the armed forces. Now, I'm not so much talking about flag officers, generals, and admirals as I am colonels, lieutenant colonels, majors, captains, and equivalent civilian ranks in terms of the rank structure. We're talking about people really questioning what the hell's going on within their own rank and within their own services. The fact that we have brain dead service chiefs, apparently, who don't get any inkling of this or who cover it up and lie about it is an indicator of just how broken the leadership of the armed forces of the United States is. And I mean that. They are broken. But Hegseth has, I don't know if Hegseth has even a clue about this, because I suspect it's being stopped by those general officers and others who are in between Hegseth and the ranks. And so what he sees when he goes amongst the ranks is not necessarily any kind of opposition or any concern. What he sees is preacher packed, as we used to say in the military. You put the people out there who are going to be the people that you want him to see. And that reflects back on you in a positive way if you're the general in charge. So all of these problems are developing down at the place where the rubber meets the road. And either no one is telling the people up above, most particularly the President of the United States, or they're lying to him, or both. And so he can't get a good picture of the instrument of policy that he is using right now and abusing right now, the armed forces, at all. And Hegseth's not about to give it to him, even if he has one. And now we've got these huge problems with blacks serving in the military. For example, this carrier that's coming off the ways down the road was going to be named after Dory Miller. Dory Miller was a hero at Pearl Harbor on Arizona. He was a hero. He was decorated by Chester Nimitz himself. They were going to name this carrier after him. Well, they've changed that. They're going to name the carrier after Trump now, or at least that's the scuttlebutt coming out of the Pentagon. That's not making blacks happy at all within the ranks of the military, because Dory Miller is a hero for those people, as he well should be. He should be a hero for the nation. So all these things are happening that are damaging, if you will, the instrument that Trump is using to pursue this insane war against Iran. And so you hear more and more encomium, more and more hagiographic statements, more and more praise of the military, more and more, we got the greatest military in the world, blah, 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 while it's falling apart underneath their feet. And this war is not helping at all. It's not just Lincoln, it's other places too. And when you have a special forces team commander in Israel opening a briefing, as happened recently, with a prayer to Jesus in Israel, people in the ranks who are not Christians, people in that SEAL team who are not Christians, people in that SEAL team who are Jewish, and he opens it with a Christian prayer, you got a problem. You got a significant problem. And Hegseth is doing nothing about it, if he knows anything about it. And much of this he's promoting. Much of it he's promoting. Frankly, Nima, just looking at the advice Hegseth is getting from his wife and Hegseth's actions himself, I would say they're both closet white racists. That'd be my conclusion. They can't show that blatantly, but they can certainly take actions that reflect that. I think they're both closet white racists. And we have a truly multicultural military. I mean, you stand an 11-man, 10-man rifle squad up, you're probably going to have 2 or 3 different religions, and not just difference as in Methodist, Catholic, Baptist. You're going to have Muslim, you're going to have Buddhist, you're going to have Jedi Knight, you're going to have atheist, you might even have a Wiccan, and you're going to have some people who are what I would say mainline Christian. But you're not going to have that lily white Christian nationalist, fundamentalist, Zionist fabric in that rifle squad or in that group of GIs, whatever it might be, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. So I don't know that Hegseth understands that. I do know that he's doing his best to make it lily white, and he's doing his best to make it male. I don't know that that's a reflection of what I've just said. I assume it is, but it's also extremely dangerous for the multicultural, multilingual, multi-religious, and non-religious troops that we have today. And the officers that come along with that, the officers who are arch Catholics, for example, and who agree with this Christian nationalist business. And when I say arch Catholics, I mean something like Opus Dei. Then you augment and deepen the problem profoundly. So it's not a happy time to be in the military right now. And he's using that not happy instrument in a vicious, murderous way in this war. And when General Kane comes on and gives a briefing about those wonderful Air Force soldiers, Air Force troops flying those wonderful planes, those B-52s, those B-1s, and all the rest of stuff, how much of that do you have to do before someone suspects you're just lying through your teeth? And I say that, and my son is one of them. My grandson, my oldest grandson, is one of them. Now, he's not flying over there. He's in San Diego, I think, doing some training work for the Air Force. But nonetheless, he could be over there.
Do you see any sort of sign that Donald Trump has learned anything from the war?
Not a thing.
So far?
Not a thing. The only thing he's learned is it's hurting him, and he is anxious. He is deliriously anxious to get out of it. And he will do just about anything kinetic to get out of it, which worries me deeply, because I know there are people in the Pentagon talking about using a small yield nuclear weapon just to send the message to Iran that we have a lot more where that came from. That's a dangerous development. But he's getting desperate. He's getting desperate like for other reasons. Bibi Netanyahu is getting desperate in Israel. Every time I pick up a Haaretz now and read some of the editorials in particular, but also some of the articles, like, for example, yesterday's about what's happening in the West Bank with this tender that is totally against everything that the UN Security Council resolution specified for that area. And that and that we have said, it's like, okay, come one, come all. We got land for you to buy. And it belongs to this guy. Get him out of here. His house is there. Oh, raise that house. No, don't raise it. I want to occupy it. Okay, go take his house. Get out of here, Palestine. Boom, dead. Oh, let me read you something. This is from Ian Williams, who's president of the Foreign Press Association. I'm gonna read it. The reactivation of the Board of Peace could, of course, be related to the whispered candidate to replace Antonio Guterres, current Secretary General, Bulgarian Nikolai Mladenov, who pipped Tony Blair to become the toady-in-chief of the board. This is the Bagaza board. It makes him a serious contender against the Argentinian Rafael Grossi of International Atomic Energy Agency fame, who now only has a few months to pull a nuclear casus belli against Iran. And in the great tradition of impartiality, the former UAE ambassador, Lana Nusabeh, is about to enter the fray, representing a tiny country that has made a name for itself as a peacemaker in the Trumpian mole, initiating wars from Iran to Yemen by way of Sudan. There is some comfort that all of these reprobates think the UN is worth rolling in the mire for. One wonders whether any of them have studied the thoughts of Marx, Groucho Marx, that is, and wondered whether they should really join any club whose standards are so debased that it would accept them. That's where we are. And that organization that Jared Kushner and Tony Blair and others like them have a hand in is right now acting as a shield while Bibi Netanyahu kills from 20 to 30 Palestinians a day. Not to mention what he's doing in Syria that's gotten Erdogan all ticked off. Not to mention what he's doing in Lebanon, which is going to get Iran to strike him again. And Trump is in this. Trump is in this for a penny and for a pound because he's making money out of it. Just like Kushner and Witkoff and the rest of them are. This is all about money. It's not about the Palestinians. It's not about a Palestinian state. It's not about the future of the region. It's all about a greater Israel on the one hand for Netanyahu, and it's all about getting rid of the Palestinians so that can happen. And it's all about money. And the bottom line for Donald Trump is money. And Jared Kushner and the rest of them, money. They are after money, more and more money. God knows how much would satisfy them. I don't think any amount would satisfy them because it's just a process of making illicit money that excites them. And they got the great, great partner in that regard in Tony Blair.
Larry, how do you see the conflict between Israel and Turkey in Syria?
Netanyahu better watch his mouth. I know Erdogan is sort of a tempest in a teapot most of the time, but Netanyahu had better watch his mouth. There's an old principle of international relations expounded by Fred Hartman in his book, Relations of Nations. And Fred calls it the conservation of enemies. And he defines it this way. And one time at Newport, he actually said this to me. A nation should try to not have more enemies at one time than it can manage. Bibi just manufactures enemies. Count them up now. I mean, I'd throw, even now with the exercises that are taking place with China, I'd throw Egypt into the category, and I'd say his enemies going around the borders are Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Iran certainly, and Syria, I think more and more, although Giuliani is trying to kind of march between the evils, if you will. I think he's an evil too, so that's kind of interesting. Turkey, Lebanon, maybe even other countries that are secondary to those countries like Pakistan. You know what I heard yesterday? Yesterday I heard that the real reason the Entente was put together, you ready for this? Was to be allied with Iran. That makes more sense to me. That makes more sense to me.
There was a report yesterday that these countries, Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia, they invited Iran to be part of the pact.
Yes, that was part of the conversation I heard.
Yeah. And it was mentioned by the head of National Security Council of Iran. He said that they wanted us in Persian. He says in Persian, they wanted us to confirm that pact. When he says in Persian, they want us to confirm it, because I'm literally translating what he said in English. It means that they wanted us to be there with them. You know, the interpretation of what he said is this. But we told them, he says, we told them, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey, we have to know each and every detail in that agreement before being part of it.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get, in the middle of that case, at the end of, signing of that without having.
I don't blame them. I don't blame them, given the circumstances right now, and given the duplicity and less than savory character of some of these people like Mohammed bin Salman. We forget this is a guy that ordered the carving of a human being in Turkey, Khashoggi. I'd be very circumspect about the way I went about making any kind of deal with MBS.
The other point that he mentioned is that it's not just about Iran. Egypt should be part of it if you
Yep.
want to make it real deal of an agreement between among these countries, important Muslim countries. Egypt should be part of it. Iran should be part of it. This is something new, Larry, to be honest. This is the Muslim world was so much divided for such a long time. This is something new. This is something new. You can downplay that. You can say they're not that significant. But after all, it's important because this is the initial days of something new coming to the region. How do you understand that?
Well, it's interesting because you rightfully say that it's long in the making, these divisions and schisms. But I look back, and I'm not an expert on it, but I look back on the initial empire that the Muslims formed, and that almost took Europe. We forget that sometimes. One of the things that unified them, besides Muhammad and besides the religious aspects of it, one of the things that unified them was what is happening right now, that they saw that the schisms, the divisions, the infighting, the hatreds, the religious conflicts, and so forth, were not helping them win. And when they did something about that, they became formidable indeed. And they took half the freaking world, the known world. So it's about time for something like that to happen again, where you see the Muslim. Now, that scares the bejesus out of Europe. And I think it scares Putin, too, to a certain extent, because when he looks south, he sees a lot of Muslims. So they have to be, if they're going to do something like that, if it's forced upon them, if it's compulsion, that's one thing. But if they're going to do something and become aggressive in that regard, then people even like Erdogan in Ankara, whom I kind of considered a bridge, not just a bridge between Asia and Europe, but also a bridge between, and the EU never understood this. That's why they wouldn't give him EU membership, one of the reasons. But that country's a bridge between, and Istanbul really reflects this. It's a bridge between the Muslim world to a certain extent and the non-Muslim world. Call it the Christian world if you want to. And got to be careful. We got to be careful that we don't come to the point where we fulfill Samuel Huntington's awesome prediction that the clash of civilizations would occur and we'd have monumental battles going on. We don't need that, not at this late date when we have the climate crisis and nuclear weapons and everything else to make it dangerous enough for us. But it is recognizable that, as you say, that things are changing, and it is partly Trump's stupid war that's speeding up, that's a catalyst for this change. People who wouldn't talk to each other are now talking to each other. People who wouldn't form an entente are now forming ententes, alliances, and so forth. Throw the Pakistanis in there, and you've got a really different animal, because you've got an animal that is hooked up with China big time, particularly the BRI and what it's doing for Central Asia. I don't know if you want to take a look at the spread in National Geographic on Central Asia. It's a stunning spread. It's Frankopan's book, The New Silk Road, in photographs and in a little bit of narrative. And from Samarkand to Tashkent to you name it, Central Asia is just alive